YouTube, welcome back to my channel. Today we are going to be talking about the new Ryan Coogler smash movie that has taken the world by storm. Everybody and their mother is talking about this film. It is just really important and really special, and I absolutely love it. Sinners. So I had the pleasure of going to see Sinners back on Mother's Day with my mom, my older sister, and my dad. And I'm really glad that I got to see it with them. Originally, I thought I was going to end up just seeing a movie by myself because I didn't think my mom or my dad were going to end up going to the theater. But my sister suggested we go see it on Mother's Day. And so everybody came and we all went to go see it. And I'm really glad that I went to see it with them because of the cultural significance of the movie, but also because of my own history with this movie. So I will explain all of that, and I will explain how much I love this movie, and I will explain some of the context of it and some of the cultural significance of this movie, some of the spiritual connections to this movie, just everything. How much I love vampires, everything. So just get excited because I'm ecstatic about this movie, and I have not been able to stop thinking about it since I saw this movie. But I'm obsessed and I just want to talk about it, so here I am. So if you haven't seen Sinners, this is your chance to click away from this video, come back, check out what I have to say about it, because I think you're really gonna enjoy it, and I would love for you to have seen it before I give away some of the movie, but also some of the context of it and how important it is. So I'm gonna count to 5, and then you guys gotta be gone, okay? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. That was your 5-second warning. I hope you're gone now so that we can continue. So let's get started on Sinners. If you are watching this video, I'm going to assume you've seen Sinners, but just as a little refresher on what this movie is about, let's talk about it. So, this is an original movie concept from Ryan Coogler. We all know Ryan Coogler. He was the director of Fruitvale Station, the director of Creed, the director of Black Panther, and Black Panther, Wakanda Forever. And we love Ryan Coogler, okay? He's also pro-Palestine. We love that. Hello. Anyways, so we absolutely love Ryan Coogler. I also love Ryan Coogler's stutter. We'll get way more into this later, but I absolutely adore Ryan Coogler's stutter because it feels very homely. It feels very much that he is still very much down to earth, very much like not willing to assimilate to this Hollywood lifestyle. But we're going to get there. We're going to talk about it. We're going to talk about the whole thing. But let's talk about the plot of Sinners. So basically, the plot of Sinners is these two brothers, these identical twin brothers, Smoke and Stack. They come from Chicago, so they originally are in the Mississippi Delta in Clarksdale. And there's a special connection between me and Clarksdale that we will talk about in a second, but they come from Clarksdale. But they ended up moving over to Chicago, and this all takes place in the 1930s. So you have these two brothers, Smoke and Stack. They come back down to Mississippi, to Clarksdale, because they want to open a juke joint. And so they round up all these cast of characters, including their nephew, Sammy, and they gather other folks to be a part of this juke joint, from Delta Slim, Cornbread, Grace and her husband, Annie, and various other people, okay? And so they are all tasked with coming to this juke joint and helping make it grand and special and amazing. And they all have a role to play. And so basically they go to this juke joint. They open this juke joint for the town. Most of the town is sharecroppers, and so a lot of the town are sharecroppers. And so they come to this juke joint because they just want to have a night where they can take all their troubles away and just come and dance and have a good time and just, drink some wine, drink some whiskey, drink some whatever, and just have a good time with their people, right? But unfortunately, there are vampires afoot. And so these vampires, they come to town, they come and they terrorize this white couple after basically a Choctaw indigenous tribe comes and is vampire hunters, and they basically hunt down this vampire, and the vampire comes and runs to this white couple's house. They don't believe the Choctaw tribe because they're racist and they are KKK members, and so basically they end up becoming vampires, and the original vampire and Remick and the couple, they end up going to the juke joint. They try to get into the juke joint. Of course, everybody in the juke joint, they're not feeling it. They try to play music and everything to get in, they're not feeling it, right? And so basically, one by one, a lot of the people who are in the juke joint end up becoming vampires. And it's basically this all-out story of the people in the juke joint, Delta Slim, Smoke, Sammy, Annie, and a few others. They end up in the juke joint and they are trying to avoid these vampires. And in the end, they end up, through the power of culture, spirituality, and using your gifts, they end up basically killing off these vampires. And I won't give the end away if you haven't seen it yet, because some people still might be watching this video who haven't seen it. But basically the ending just involves Smoke killing a Klans member who wanted to kill him in the first place. So that is basically the story of Sinners. I know it was a little wonky, but if you've seen it, you've seen it, you've seen it, you've seen it, okay? And to that, I have seen on the internet that people have seen Sinners up to 7 times. 7 times. And you know what? I don't blame them. This was one of the best movies I've seen in a long time. A long time. Okay? The first thing I love about this film, when I first heard about it in the first place, was the vampire element. The black vampire element, okay? So for me, I grew up loving vampires, okay? When I was a kid, I used to have this world that I would go to. I don't know if I called it Vampire World, Vampire Land, something like that. And I would go to this world. Like, it's my imaginary world, but I would go to Vampire Land or Vampire World. And I was always talking about going to Vampire Land. I was always talking about going there. I even, whenever my mom would buy the high C fruit punch, like the ones you could get in a jug, I would always pour large glasses of that, and then I'd pretend that I was drinking blood. Like, the whole thing, I was obsessed with vampires, right? And in the 90s, we really had some great representation of vampires, and even black vampires, okay? Like, in the 80s, of course, we had the Lost Boys. And then in the 90s, we would have things like Vampires in Brooklyn. We would have Blade. And then in the early 2000s, we would have Queen of the Damned. We had Interview with a Vampire. We had a lot of representation for vampires. And then, of course, in the late 2000s, notice my shrug, we had Twilight. And we all know the best part of Twilight was really the Volturi, so there's that. But we ended up having Twilight, and then vampires got kind of corny, so, But within the last 10 years, we really haven't had any, really good vampire representation, unless you, count the Vampire Diaries and the originals. But other than that, we really haven't had any, really good vampire, stories. There was, or is, the series of the remake of the Interview with a Vampire, the Anne Rice, Vampire Lestat, and there's a TV show of it, and the main vampires are black. Shout out to that. But other than that, we really haven't had any like really good vampire representation. And so when I heard that Ryan Coogler and Michael B. Jordan were putting out a vampire flick, Black Vampires, I was all in. I was like, okay, I'm gonna see this anyways. I don't even know what this story is gonna be about. I don't know nothing, but I'm here for it. Okay, I am here for it. And then the movie came out, and I saw everybody raving about it, like literally raving about it. And I was like, oh my gosh, I have to see this movie. I don't know what's going on, but I have to see it. I have to see it. I have to see it. And for weeks, I just wasn't able to see it, right? And so then on Mother's Day, my sister was like, let's take mom, dad can come too, and we'll go see Sinners. And I was like, cool. So we went to go see Sinners. And I'm so glad that I did, because there's just so much to talk about in this film. Like, it's so good. And like, I mean it, if you have not seen this film, you have to see this film. I promise you, your life will change if you see this film. It truly will change. So we see it, we come out of the theater, and my mind is blown, and I can't stop thinking about it. I looked up people's reviews, I looked at all the TikTok videos about it, I've looked up the music about it, everything. Because I'm obsessed now. I'm obsessed. And I completely understand how people can get obsessed with this film, because it's just that good and you want to know more and more and more, right? And all the lore about it, and all the ways that Michael B. Jordan, did his role, and all the things that Ryan Coogler looked up to find out more about, making this story, and like the whole thing. You just want to know more and more and more. And I've learned some things. I've heard some people talk about some stuff. So let's just talk about it, okay? So my favorite part, and I have two favorite parts of this film, but my absolute favorite part is the Choctaw vampire hunters. Now, I know the Choctaw vampire hunters are very small portion of this film, but they make such a huge impact in this film. Truly, 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 such a huge impact, okay? So the Choctaw vampire hunters come in around, so it's like after Smoke and Stack basically gather all the materials, gather all the people, gather all the stuff to go to the juke joint to make the night, perfect. Right around the time they're like about to go to the juke joint, they're about to go, set everything up so that the night is going off with a bang, we have this other part, and it basically goes to this man. We don't know who this man is yet. It goes to this man, and he's basically on fire. Like, he's burning. And we don't understand what's going on. So he's burning. He like runs to this house, right? And there's this white couple in it. And when he opens the door, you see a KKK hoodie. And so he runs in, and he just basically doesn't explain who he is, doesn't explain what he wants, but he basically tries to trick the couple into letting him in. And so they basically do, because he's a white man and because they're racist, they'll let him in. And so he goes in, and we end up learning that his name is Remick, and he's an Irish vampire. And so the Remick, the Irish vampire, he ends up going into the house, and there's like the door, and then there's a room to the left, and he goes into the room to the left, and he's like hanging out with the husband. And I saw on TikTok that somebody pointed out that they actually have kids, which I didn't notice because I've only seen it once, so I didn't notice. But apparently they have a kid. And so basically, while Remick is in the room with the husband, somebody knocks on the door again. So the wife opens the door, and she sees these indigenous people, and they are from the Mississippi Choctaw tribe. And they are trying to warn this white couple that who they just let in, or they don't even know that he went into the house yet, but they know that there is a vampire on the loose. And so they're trying to warn this couple that there is danger and that you need to watch out because something is coming. And if you see this person, you do not let them in. Of course, because they're racist and they're KKK members, they decide, oh, we're not going to listen to the Choctaw. No, there's some ignorant indigents and they're basically just light-skinned niggas. And I'm just like, what? So then they don't listen. So they're like, so the Choctaw are like, okay, well, we have been chasing him up until this point, but now it's starting to get dark. So basically, if you want to be ignorant and you want to be racist, cool. We did our part. The rest is up to fate. Deuces. And I said, I know that is right. I know that is right. You do what you can and then you just leave it alone. Because at that point, the lady could have listened to them. But she was too racist to see beyond her, black and white and her racism bullshit. So, of course, she's like, I can't listen to y'all. Y'all ain't white. And so the Choctaw said, well, we tried. Bye. And they left. What happened next? She closes the door, goes around the corner. Her husband's turned. Her baby's probably turned too or dead. And now she's about to be turned too. Because he didn't listen because of your racism. And that's one of the morals of this story. First off, listen to indigenous people. Because 9 times out of 10, indigenous people have the answers. But y'all don't ever want to listen to indigenous people. Why? Because y'all are ignorant. And y'all never want to listen to indigenous people. Even though indigenous people, especially the ones with the real knowledge and the real care and the real understanding, they have been on these lands for eons, okay? Because they're indigenous to these lands. They know what's up. So I would think that y'all would listen to indigenous people more often than you do, but you don't. And then what happens? Something bad happens because y'all didn't listen to indigenous people. So I hope this teaches you to listen to indigenous people. But also, I hope it teaches you that a lot of the things that happen in this country happen to indigenous people first. It happens to native people first. And then it ends up happening to y'all. And when indigenous people try to warn y'all that this stuff is coming because they've already dealt with it, and y'all don't listen. So I hope that you know that the whole premise is to listen to indigenous people. Period, point blank. Okay? Okay. But also, I just absolutely simply love the vampire hunters. The Choctaw vampire hunters. They are so cool. And I, like the rest of the internet, absolutely would love a sequel series. Even if it's not a movie, even if it was a series, I would watch the heck out of it because I want to know more about these Choctaw vampire hunters and I want to see a story on them because I think it was awesome, because even though this was a majority black story, even though this is a majority black story about black people, the fact that Ryan Coogler added in the Choctaw meant a lot, especially to me because I am black and indigenous, so I'm black and native, and that just meant a lot to me. Also, I have aunties and family member, non-blood, but family members who are Choctaw, who are Mississippi Choctaw and black, and so that means a lot to me because I grew up around them and they are incredible people and they're wonderful. And I just love the Choctaw, by the way. I just love the Choctaw a lot. They're great people. And I'm just really proud of Ryan Coogler for, even putting their story into it, even in the beginning of the entire film, right? To tie it into the story. And I absolutely love that. I really, really do. And I just love that Ryan Coogler was big enough to add these cultures into his story without it being, they all had a purpose and it didn't feel like it just was dropped in there for, oh, look, I added in this culture happy, but it felt like it actually had a purpose. It had an actual purpose, and I love that. I absolutely love it. So that was one of my favorite scenes. My second favorite scene of the entire film was the dance scene. And if you know, you know. So while everybody's in the juke joint, Sammy, Preacher Boy Sammy, Okay, so the reason that he's called Preacher Boy Sammy. So he's called Preacher Boy Sammy because he is the son of a preacher. He is Smoke and Stack's cousin by blood. And so, Sammy's dad is a preacher. And Sammy's dad does not want Sammy to, play guitar or sing or, go to the juke joint or do any of these things, because he thinks it's all devil. He thinks it's all him dancing with the devil and doing things that he shouldn't be, sinning. But Sammy says, well, I'm going to do it anyways because I'm a sharecropper. I do a lot of the sharecropping. The dad does not. The dad does not sharecrop. See, the dad is the preacher. So the dad never actually has to sharecrop. But Sammy and his siblings, I think it's his siblings, they do have to do all of this manual labor, right? And so, he's like, I just want a night where I don't have to work, I don't have to do any of these things, and I just want to play my guitar. Because my guitar is my gift, and I know that, and I'm really good at this, guitar playing, and I really want to do it, so I'm going to go do it, okay? And so he's like, I'm going to be with my cousins, it's going to be fine, whatever. And so Sammy goes to the juke joint, and he helps, Smoke and Stack set it up. And so he gets called to the stage during, the night to perform. And so he ends up playing his guitar and singing this incredible blues song, right? But what's so cool about it is that he's singing the blues song, right? But what he's actually doing is he's conjuring the ancestors. Yes, yes, yes. Because what happens is he's there, he's playing his guitar, doing the blues, and what happens? A man with an electric guitar ends up showing up. A man with a DJ booth ends up showing up, right? Like a DJ set. A man who is from Africa. A man who is modern day, like hip hop. Women, everybody, they just start showing up. All different types of, it's all different eras of our music as Black people, right? And it's all different kinds, right? From Africa to modern day hip hop to, rock and roll to, when hip hop first started with the DJing and everything. It was incredible. And what I love even more is the fact that while they're having all of these Black ancestors and, people from the future, showing up and showing how important our culture and our music is as Black people, they also had Grace and her husband in there. And they're Chinese, and they are the shop owners in town. And for a lot of people, this movie might have been the first time they ever saw Asian people, specifically Chinese, in the South. And so a lot of people were like, wow, I never knew this existed. But it's a real thing, My dad, which I will get into in a second, but my dad, whose father actually spent a majority of his childhood in Clarksdale, knows that there are Asian / Chinese specific people in Mississippi and in the South, right? And so, while this whole dancing scene is going on, they also add the Chinese ancestor, and they're doing their cultural dance, and it's one of the best scenes of the entire film. And I swear, if you have not seen this film, you have to see it, because that is one of the most important scenes of the entire film, because it is so expressive, and it's just, you don't have to have seen any of the rest of the movie, but if you see this scene, you'll understand. You'll understand, because it is just so important to Black people and our contributions to culture and music. But it also is a poignant reminder, because this is going on, the dancing and everything with the ancestors and everything, but there's actually a flash scene of what Remick, who is outside watching all of this happen, sees this as, right? And it's the juke joint basically burning down. And so that was kind of the metaphor of the fact that we have this rich culture, we have this rich music, but unfortunately it gets stolen, you know? And then our talents get stolen and we are left with nothing, right? And it's just so poignant. And that takes me to Remick in himself. So Remick is Irish. And so he actually lived out English colonization back in Ireland. And he was brought to this country. And he got turned into a vampire. And so he doesn't have any more memories really of his talent, because he had talent when he was in Ireland. And he was like very gifted and he had these talents. But he came to this country, he became a vampire, and his talents were stripped away because now he's undead and he can't do the same things he used to be able to do. And so when he sees Sammy be able to conjure the spirits and the ancestors and to, you know, the culture that lives in Sammy, he gets jealous. And so he wants to come for Sammy because he wants to take over Sammy's gifts, right? And that's what he wants. And so that's the reason why he comes to the juke joint in the first place, because he knows who Sammy is and he wants to take his gifts over. Poignant. Okay? So those two are my favorite scenes. But another scene that I love a lot, which I've heard people talk about, is this scene with Delta Slim. So Delta Slim is this old man, and he usually performs, he does the blues, and he usually performs out by the train station. And so he'll be out there performing to make some money, you know, whatever. And then during the night, he'll go to the juke joints and he'll go perform there. And so Stack actually gets Slim to come to his and his brother's juke joint to perform. And so while they are in the car on their way to where the juke joint is going to be to set up everything, they see this chain gang on the side of the road, and it triggers Delta Slim, because Delta Slim had a friend who was a part of the chain gang but ended up getting YouTube terms for black people. I don't know how to explain that. I don't. Jim Crow South. You understand what I'm talking about. And I guess I'll just say it. If I get censored, I get censored. The lynching that happened to his friend was horrible. And they actually ended up mutilating their manhood. And it just was really triggering to Delta Slim, because him and his friend, you know, they had come into a little bit of wealth, but they ended up, well, at least Delta Slim ended up squandering it on alcohol, unfortunately. And then his friend ended up doing something, ended up as a chain gang member, and they ended up and his manhood, right? And it's really, 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 like, sad. But my favorite part about this is they're in the car, and Delta Slim is just feeling all of his feelings because he sees the chain gang and it just triggers him so much. And then he just starts to hum, and it's like this really gutter, visceral hum that, like, just black people, only black people can really, like, you know, that's from the ancestors, that's from the hardship, that's from everything, right? And then Sammy ends up playing his guitar, and it's just like this really poignant, incredible scene. I love it so much, okay? So much, okay? So I just want to pause really fast and talk about some of my history, my family history around this movie and how I connect to it. So my dad is from New Orleans / Baton Rouge in Louisiana, and his mother's side of the family is Creole, and she is from New Orleans. On his father's side, he actually has roots in Mississippi. And my dad ended up telling me after we were done watching the film, that his father actually spent a good majority of his childhood in Clarksdale, where this movie takes place. And so I thought that was really awesome, because my dad really got a lot out of this film because of that, which I thought was awesome. And also, my dad is a huge blues fan. Like, my dad loves the blues, so this was like the perfect film for him, because he loves action adventure, he loves the blues, he loves anything black, and this is about his history. His father actually lived out there in Clarksdale. He grew up there, so I think it's really, really dope that my dad got to experience that. I'm really glad he got to see this film. But yeah, so my grandfather, on my father's side, lived in Clarksdale. So that's really cool. Like I said, I'm also Black and Indigenous. I'm not Choctaw. I am mostly, on my mother's side, I am Indigenous and Black. And then on my father's side, I'm Creole and Black. So yeah. But on my mother's side, I am Cheyenne, Powhatan, Blackfoot, and Cherokee on my mother's side. So I really, really enjoyed the Choctaw in this film. I thought that was awesome. And then as a Black person, I really enjoyed this film because my cultures were all up in this film and I loved it. And then, the even cooler thing, on my mother's side of the family, on her mother's side, I actually have a little bit of Irish. Yeah. So I felt really represented by this film, like up and down and sideways. I felt extremely represented by this film. Like, I just felt really, really connected to this film. The cultures, the storyline, everything. And I love it so much. Okay, so that's a little bit of my family history and how I connect to it. But also, spiritually, I connect to this film. So I love Annie so much, okay? Annie, you are a queen, and you were one of the people to end up saving most of the people there. Even though you ended up having to die yourself, you saved a lot of people, and we'll explain why. So, Annie, we know she uses, and y'all will call it folk spirituality or, folk, whatever, but I call it just African spirituality, hoodoo. She does her work, and she obviously, does this work for the community out of the goodness of her heart, because she doesn't even accept real money. And so she had given Smoke so different cultures call it different things, okay? So she called it a mojo bag, but other cultures call it a gree bag. And then other cultures, like indigenous people, will call it a medicine bag. So it all just depends, but they have very similar cultural significance in different cultures, right? And actually, my mom just told me this story the other day, and it's really cool. So when her and my aunt, who they were living in California at the time, and this is back in the 60s, and they had ended up going on a train to Philadelphia to visit my grandmother's people who lived in Philly, because that's where my grandmother's from. And they were on the train, and I think they were coming back to California at that point. And this was back in the 60s, like I said. And so there were these Filipino sailors on the train, and basically my aunt or my mom or somebody asked what these bags were that they were wearing around their neck, and the Filipino sailors were like, well, these are our, I don't remember what my mom said they called them, but they were basically they're protection bags, right? And they were like, these are our protection bags against vampires. And so of course my aunt laughs at it, because she's like, they're younger, and so she laughs at it and is like, oh, vampires, whatever, not really taking it seriously. And the sailors, the Filipino sailors, look at my aunt disgusted, what, why are you laughing, this is not funny, these are real, whatever. And then they were like, I'm gonna need you to stop laughing, paraphrasing, I'm gonna need you to stop laughing, basically, because vampires are really real and we've seen them, and we don't mess around with vampires, like, hello. And I was like, oh, okay. And like, different cultures have talked about vampires before, and seeing vampires and being around vampires. So this is not just like some folklore, whatever. Actual cultures have seen vampires before. Like, they are real. So just wanted to throw it out there. But my point is that different cultures do have protection bags. And I have my protection bag. So I will show you that. So this is my medicine bag. This medicine bag, and I have several of these, okay? I have like 3, maybe 4 of these. But this one specifically, this one specifically was made by my Wampanoag auntie, not by blood, but like my Wampanoag auntie, who made this beautiful medicine bag for me. And I love turtles. Anybody who knows me knows that. And so she added a turtle on the front, which I love. It's a little turtle on the front, and I love it. And yeah, it has like these different colored beads on there, kind of like in rainbow colored. And it just holds things like sage in there. It holds tobacco in there. It holds like crystals and stuff, and like things that will protect you, right? Like these feathers that are poking out are my eagle feathers that a former AIM member who ended up passing away gifted me once. He was Lakota. And so just like sacred things are in this, bag, and it's meant to be worn, and it's meant to be there to protect you. Now, I just want to throw this out there. You saw the one that Smoke was wearing. It was very small, right? Mine is kind of large. I have large ones, I have small ones. It just really depends on what kind you want and what you're going to be putting inside of the protection bag, right? So yeah, but a lot of cultures have those kind of protection bags. Like I said, they're called all different kinds of things: mojo bags, gree bags, medicine bags. Just depends on the culture, but a lot of cultures have those bags. And one thing I really loved about the fact that that was brought up in the story, in the film, in the movie, was I think it was a reminder to a lot of people that there's a lot going on this earth, right? Both on this physical plane, but also in the spirit realm, in space, in other planes and other dimensions that we don't even know about. There are things going on, and we need to protect ourselves, because there's not just chaos on this earth with presidents and all the things going on with that, and genocides and all different things going on horribly on this earth. There's also stuff going on spiritually. There's also stuff going on in space. There's also stuff going on underwater. There's stuff going on everywhere. And I think that the reason Ryan Coogler wanted to add that in there was maybe to remind people that we need to keep protection on us. Because what protected Smoke in the end when he had to come up against a Klans member who had sold him and Stack the barn in the first place to be able to open up the juke joint, who later was going to come back and kill them because he's a KKK member? What protected Smoke? Right. It was the mojo bag. And so I think that was the point, was to remind people that there's some stuff going on in the world and we need to be protected. So we need to be wearing our protection. Now, I was watching a TikTok video of this person, and I guess she, her spirituality is hoodoo. And so she was basically like don't be out here, making mojo bags on the internet and basically showing people how to make mojo bags who don't need to be making these things. And I agree. Let's not get it twisted, okay? Because there are closed practices in many cultures that don't need to be open to the internet. Because there's a lot of people who don't need to be practicing things that they don't really understand. And that there are spirits, deities, things that you guys would not understand. And as somebody who is very spiritual, I practice my indigenous spirituality. Somebody who from a very early age was able to see spirits. Somebody who has been through the ringer when it comes to spirituality, and I'm talking all kinds of spirituality. It's been a trip, honey. Okay, if you even knew my story, you would be flabbergasted, okay, of the things that I've seen, witnessed, experienced. Okay, I won't go into detail about some of it, but I will just say that I at one point ended up in the hospital because of some stuff. Okay, I'm just gonna leave it there. But you gotta have that protection on you. But also remember that there are closed practices that you can't practice. And so find your culture, find your spiritual practices version of a mojo bag, a gree bag, a medicine bag, and do that. But keep that protection on you. And even if it's not a bag, even if it's just a crystal around your neck, even if it's just, some sage in your bag, even if it's just some frankincense and myrrh, a candle, a white candle, like something, right? Keep that protection on you, honey, because we gonna need it. And furthermore, I want to bring up this. Shout out to Ryan Coogler, because I absolutely adore you. And here's why. And this is no hate to Christians, so don't even start it. But I absolutely, positively, with my whole heart, love that you affirmed that our spirituality as Black and Indigenous people is not evil. Because there are too many people out here in this world, Black people included, who try to demonize our spirituality because they do not want us to practice these very ancient forms of spiritual practices that our ancestors from way back were practicing before the colonizers ever came with that book, right? And my dad has this saying, and it's very, very true. We got the book and they got the land. And it's like 100%. And so I'm not trying to villainize Christians, but at the same time, as somebody who knows the harmfulness that Christianity has had on Black people, Indigenous people, Native people, people of color of all kinds, Irish people, I just want to say, our spirituality is really important and we need to continue to practice it. One, so it doesn't die out. But two, because y'all not going to keep demonizing something that is so sacred and so important to our people. You just ain't going to do it. You ain't going to do it. And that goes for Black spirituality, African spirituality, however you want to call it. That goes for Native spirituality, the whole thing. Even the Irish have a spirituality. Before the English came over and threw the book at them, they had spirituality back then, okay? The Gaelics, the Celtics, they had spirituality. And I need y'all to go and I need y'all to find this spirituality because it's important, okay? It's really important. And I really love that the message, the final message of this entire film was the church ain't gonna get you really anywhere, okay? Because when Sammy came back to his father after the night and he came into that, church room and he still had his hands on his guitar after defeating Remick and all of that. And he just is clenching that guitar with his whole chest. And his father does what? Drop the guitar. Repent for your sins and you'll be fine. Basically, succumb to the church and you'll be fine. But you gotta put away your gifts. You gotta put away your gifts. And Sammy said, you thought, bye, and left. And I actually really love that because, one, he told us your gifts are way more important. Because honestly, and I've heard people talk about this on the internet, and I agree. Honestly, in a lot, and not just Christianity, but in a lot of Western religions, they are very much, come to us. We will be your saviors. You have a gift? Throw it away. Throw away your gift because you do not need it. Succumb to us. Succumb to the church. And then the most talented people will be in the church, sitting there, not being able to express their full potential, their full talent, the talents that the Creator gave them. And Sammy said, I'm not going to do that. No, I'm not. So I'm leaving, and that's just is what it is. I'm leaving. Sorry. I'm so sorry, but I am not staying here and being I'm not, okay? I know what my gifts are, and I know how they are important, and I know what they can do, and I refuse to sit here and not express my talent, my gifts that the Creator has given me. And he left and became Buddy Guy. but honestly, like, you know, and so I really hope some of y'all took that to heart, because a lot of y'all be sitting there and y'all be having these wonderful, amazing gifts, and the church will tell you, that's the devil's work. You cannot do it. And then they won't give you any kind of anything. And you're stuck in there. And then you're like 80 years old, 90 years old, on your deathbed. And you're just like, I had a dream. I wanted to be a singer, but I couldn't do it because the church minister. And again, this is not me villainizing Christianity, the church, religion, but you have to, hello. Anyways, but yeah, I really love that. And I love that Ryan Coogler added that in there because I thought that was so special and amazing, and I love it. So let's have a different conversation. So I talked about all of that, but let's talk about something that I might be able to relate to a lot. Girl, I'm light skinned. Okay, I'm light skinned, so yeah. Let's talk about Mary. Let's talk about Mary. Because you know the internet has been a buzz about Mary and her 1/8, great grandfather or something like that, and how he was black. And how, because he was black, she gets the black card. And I think about that a lot. And there's this conversation going on online about passing, whether that means like white passing or like white presenting, and what the difference is of that. And I don't know if I can totally like vibe with it or if I understand it fully. I am light skinned. Very light skin, and I feel like if I didn't have my afro, would people really know I'm black? Now I get many different cultures thrown at me. I get Latina, I get Ethiopian, I get all different kinds of cultures, right? I even get black, but like I get a lot of different cultures, and I never know if because I have pictures, which I'll show on screen, of me with like straight hair. And I just don't know, like, would I be, and I need to know this because I just don't know, would I be white passing back then? And if so, could I have played Mary? Nah, I don't think so. People, I pointed out me being light skinned and like me whatever, and then somebody would come in my comment section like on a video on a TikTok or something, and they'd be like, "Girl, we know you black." I'm like, "Oh, really?" They're like, "Yeah, you just real light skinned." I'm like, "Oh, okay." Like, I don't know if people really see me as black in the way that, you know, I think I see myself as black, or if, because, okay, so examples that I've seen on the internet with this whole Mary conversation is Pete Wentz from Fall Out Boy. I'll show pictures. Pete Wentz from Fall Out Boy. I've seen Mariah Carey. I've seen the dude from Prison Break, which I can't think of his name right now. Examples of people who are white passing or white presenting. And see, I'm still confused because I'm like, Pete Wentz specifically, and like even Mariah Carey, they have a black parent, right? So like Pete Wentz has a black mom, but she's like Afro-Jamaican, right? And she's very like light skinned, which my mother is also very light skinned. But the difference is that I have and I'll show pictures, a melanated father. So maybe that's why people see me as black, like whatever, because my mom is really light skinned, but my dad is melanated. So maybe with Pete Wentz though, his mom, although light skinned, she just have a tiny bit of melanin, but like she's very, very light skinned, even though she's Afro-Jamaican. And then his dad is like full on white. And when Pete Wentz was younger, before Fall Out Boy, he used to wear his hair natural, right? He used to have the braids. And then there was this one time during the Fall Out Boy hiatus where he had his afro out. And that was the first time I knew he was, you know, biracial in the first place. 'Cause I didn't know at first. And then I think about it, I'm like, so for like the majority of Fall Out Boy, up until the point of him showing off his afro, I did not know Pete Wentz had a black mom or like an Afro-Jamaican mom, because he literally presented, I guess, as a white man. Like, I knew he had different features, right? Like, hello, he didn't look like your average white man, but at the same time he did sort of look like a white man. And I don't know if that was because at the time, you know, emo music and the hair swoop and the whole thing and like whatever, and like you always had to straighten his hair. I don't know if that's why, or if it's because I think I've only ever seen him with white girls, and like his current wife is white, and he's had kids with white people. Like he's had kids with Ashley Simpson, like he has a son with Ashley Simpson, and then he has his current wife who is white, and so all of his kids look white. Like the blackness did not show up at all. And right now Pete Wentz has, you know, his hair straightened and it's blonde. I don't know. And then that confused me more because I was like, I'm always on the defense when it comes to Pete, because I'm like, no, he definitely has a black mom. So what are we talking about? But then that's also because my mom sometimes will not be seen as black sometimes because of her very light skin. But I'm like, no, my mama very black. She black and indigenous, but she black. I mean, we have some European on my mom's side and my dad's side, to be honest. But like on my mom's side, you know, we have some French and some Irish on my mom's side. So, I mean, we all mixed up, but like, so I was confused by that conversation. And like, yeah, I was like, I don't know what to do with that. I'm confused. Help. Now let's talk about Mary when it comes to her character. So, Mary is this 1/8 black chick. She white. But, you know, she has 1/8 black. And you know, back in the day, it was the 1-drop rule. So, of course, she's seen as colored. And so, she was in love with when he was living in the South, in Mississippi. And he left her. So, Stack actually gets Mary to be with this white man because he feels like Mary will do better with this white man because, you know, Smoke and Stack, they grew up with Mary in Mississippi when they were kids, and Stack and Mary had a thing, but, you know, Smoke and Stack left, went to Chicago, and so when they come back, Mary finds out, and Stack basically tells her, I set you up with a white man. And she was like, boy, I did not want to be with a white man. I wanted to be with you. I wanted to be with my people. Okay? It was real rude and disrespectful because her mom died. It was real rude and disrespectful that you did not come to my mother's funeral because she basically helped raise you. So, helped you out with all different types of stuff when you were a kid, and you didn't come to her funeral? Rude. And then she basically is like, I did never want to be with this white man. I wanted to be with you. I wanted to be with you. So the irony of it all is, Remick and them are outside trying to get into this juke joint, right? And so they come to the door. They're basically playing a little, fiddles. And they're singing little Irish songs and, whatever. And it's not really that good. But, so they're, like, not permitted in because they're like, nah, this is kind of whack. And so they, like, basically leave real slowly. So, they end up, over the night, not having enough money in the juke joint because some of the people who came to the juke joint obviously are sharecroppers. So they're not really getting paid like that. So they don't really have money. So they're not really getting a real profit from the juke joint. So they're like, we need some money. Like Smoke and Stack are like, we need some money. Like, let's get it together. So basically Remick and the other two, they have money. Well, Remick does have money. And they were willing to give money to Smoke and Stack to come in and play at the juke joint. They basically turn them away. But after a minute, Mary basically brings up, well, that guy and the couple, they had money. Like, should I go find them and, get them to give me money? And Stack's like, yeah. And so she goes out and she goes to find these people to get this money. And they have gold coins and everything. But basically they trick her. They try to be like all sympathetic to her because they find out that her mom passed and all of these things. But she sees it firsthand. But then she gets cornered and they basically turn her. And so she comes back to the barn and she basically, tricks Stack into going into one of the rooms in the barn and they end up having sex. But what ends up happening is midway through sex, she ends up drooling like a freaking weirdo. And so this was kind of weird. People do it though. People like this stuff. To each their own. Mary's like drooling. And then she basically asks Stack, oh, you want some? And Stack's like, hell yeah. I'm like, okay, well, that was stupid. And so she ends up basically giving her saliva to him and then basically eating him alive. He dies, Sammy is tasked to go and find him because some weird stuff's going on up front. And he tries to go find him, but then he finds out that they were having sex, so he's like nervous to go and, interrupt. So then by the time they all go back there to see what's going on, he dead. And Mary runs and bolts out the door, right? Freaking weirdo. So then Smoke is like trying to save his brother, but his brother dies. And then wakes back up like 10 minutes later and is like, I'm back. And he's just basically, now he's a vampire. And he runs out the door too. And, well, he tries to, get everybody. But then he ends up outside. And then everything just, everything else comes. And, the vampire stuff really comes into play. But, because you can't call her a white woman, I guess, because she technically would be colored back then, right? She wouldn't technically be like a full white woman. But at the end of the day, she is presenting as one. So I guess you can say, do not trust these. I'm not going to say that. But listen, they will get you in trouble. I'm just saying. No, I'm joking. But seriously, like, Mary was wild. And them turning Stack was wild. And I felt bad for Smoke because I was like, dang, that's your twin brother. That's your twin brother. Which, side note, totally side note, there was some memes online where people were like, some kid somewhere thinks that Stack and Smoke are really twins. That Michael B. Jordan has a twin. The same way that 90s kids thought that Annie and Hallie from The Parent Trap, Lindsay Lohan's version, were actually twins. And you want to know why it's funny? Because I thought that when I was a kid. Because I was young. I was really young. I did not know. I didn't really know Lindsay Lohan like that. So it happens. I didn't know. So I ended up falling for it. And then there was this special that came out behind the scenes of The Parent Trap. And, Lindsay Lohan was kind of explaining what was going on set. And she was standing there. And she did not have somebody else standing there with her. And I was like, where's the twin? And they were like, the twins were real, okay? And I was like, what? My small little brain could not comprehend. No, I was confused. So I was like, you know what? I hear it. I get it. Yep, 100%. Anyways, so, yeah, no, but Mary was just an interesting character. She really, really was. She really, really was. And then you had our girl, Pearline. And I love me some Pearline. She is beautiful. And so she's basically, not the love interest technically, because she actually married. Hello. She married. So basically Sammy meets her at the train station, because they end up going to the train station. I already talked about that. But Sammy meets her at the train station, and he is enamored, okay? He's like, yes, ma'am. So I'm like, okay. So she ends up coming to the juke joint, and they're dancing together and just having a good old funky time. And then Sammy and her end up going into one of the rooms, and, well, you know what happens. But I'm just like, she was married. But she didn't care that night. She said, boy, I'm here to have a good time, not a long time. Period. I said, okay, ma'am. You do you. You do you, boo. And then Sammy is on his guitar during the dance scene, getting it in, bro. He was singing down. And who was up there on stage doing her thing? Miss Pearline, who's like a little cat it's funny. And then she ends up singing a song actually too, and she's so talented. Oh my gosh. And that's the one where it's stomping. Oh, I love it so much. Okay, and then we have to talk about cornbread. Well, let's go back to Pearline actually. So all that happens, and then once the vampires start coming around, so Annie is trying to get everybody together, because she was basically this whole film talking about the haints and all that, demons and stuff. And she was just basically, chalking all of this up to evil spirits and stuff. But once the vampires show up, she's like, nah, this is vampires. This ain't no evil spirits. It's no haints. Vampires. And so she gets everybody correct, everybody ready. She's like, we gotta have the steak to put it through the heart. We gotta have the garlic. We gotta have the holy water. We gotta have everything. We gotta get it together. And so she's getting everything together. And then there's this circle of the people who are still in the juke joint, because once they find out that that Stack had passed before he turned into a vampire, once they learn that, they basically have everybody leave. But that was a bad idea actually, because everybody who left the juke joint ended up getting turned. And so now they're outside doing an Irish jig with Remick. But inside, the people who are still there, which is Delta Slim, Annie, Smoke, Sammy, Pearline, Grace. I think that's it. Yeah, I think that's it. They all have to, chew on some garlic to make sure that they're not vampires, right? And so why does it get turned to Pearline? And she's like, I'm not chewing on this. This is disgusting. I was like, girl, tell me about it. I would never eat a raw piece of garlic. That sounds nasty. But Annie was like, you better eat that. Smoke was like, you better eat that before you get shot. I was like, okay, well, you need to take it that far. You do not need to take it that far. Sammy was like, don't, we don't need to go that far now. I was like, you relax. Then I was like, Pearline, girl, eat the dang on garlic before you get shot for no reason. Like, girl, what are you doing? But Pearline she was funny. I love her. But yeah, let's talk about the Irish. Okay, so the Irish connection in this movie, beautiful, amazing. And like I said, I have a tiny bit of Irish on my mama's side, on my mama's side. I love the Irish. Okay, point blank period. Okay, specifically the ones that live in Ireland. Y'all the real MVPs. Because honestly, I feel like out of all the European countries out there, y'all one of the only ones who really understand what colonization feels like for people of color. For black people, indigenous people, and people of color. Y'all the only ones. Because the way England colonized y'all was foul. It was absolutely foul. And speaking of that, there's actually a song that Sinead O'Connor, you know who Sinead O'Connor is. She actually did the cover of the Nothing Compares to You song by Prince back in the day. That's probably what you know her mostly for. She recently passed away, R.I.P. Basically, she had a song out back in the 90s where she talks about the Irish potato famine and basically how there was no famine because it was basically forced starvation because England came in and they threw the book at them and they basically made them stop learning Irish and learning about their history, and then they basically made them eat potatoes and took all of the meat, fish, and vegetables out of the country over to England and basically forcefully starved the entire population of Ireland. And that is exactly what's going on right now in Gaza. Connections, but that's real. And so that's why I feel like a real kindred spirit with Irish people, because I'm like, yes, Irish people are one of the few people who really understand us because they also went through European colonization, specifically England, just like us. And so they get it. They get it. That's why they're never going to side with England. That's why, and that's so funny, that's why when the Queen died, Irish people were so freaking happy. It was so funny to watch. But, yeah, so like I said, you know, Remick, he was there during that colonization period. And so when he gets turned and brought to America, he's like, now my gifts are gone. You know, Europe basically took my gifts and basically, you know, taught me this Bible, taught me these Christian words and these prayers and whatnot, and took away my spirituality, took away my culture. And so all I know now is this, you know, these Christian prayers that are not part of my culture at all. And I'm over here just trying to like live my life, right? But now I'm turned into a vampire, so now I feel like, you know, weird. And the thing is that when Sammy goes to kill Remick, it's really interesting because obviously we know Preacher Boy Sammy, his father's, you know, preacher, and he grew up learning all these scriptures and, you know, Christian prayers and all this stuff. And so when he goes to recite these prayers, Remick knows them too because he was also colonized and made to learn these prayers. And so they're both saying the prayers and whatnot, and Remick is basically baptizing Sammy in that water, but Sammy ends up killing him with his guitar. And Remick basically, you know, he knows that he knows that those Christian prayers aren't going to do anything because those are not him. Those are not his culture. That's not his spirituality. That's not anything. So he knows those are not going to do anything for him. So he's like, look, okay, like these prayers, they ain't going to do nothing. because those are not my culture. Those are not my spirituality. Those were forced upon me because of colonization. So I'm not, and I think that's so cool that they brought that up. I really do. Plus, let's all be really serious. The Irish jig out in the field was gas. It was fire. It was fire. It was fire. Okay? Absolutely love it. Absolutely love it. Absolutely love it. Okay? They were getting down in that field, because there were so many people online who were like, they were getting down a little too hard out in that field. I might have had to join them. I just might have had to join them. I was like, they were getting down though. They were getting down. So that's awesome. And yeah, also cornbread. I love cornbread. I really do, because the scene where cornbread is turned and then so cornbread, he's a sharecropper, and he comes to the juke joint to basically the bouncer, right? And a juke joint, if I haven't made it clear, is like basically a nightclub for that time period. So he's basically the bouncer of the juke joint. And so he had to go to the bathroom. So he's like, Delta Slim, can you come and, check the door, or, stand by the door while I go to the bathroom? And so he went to the bathroom. It takes him like forever to go to the bathroom. And then he ends up coming back. And everybody's asking him like, where were you? And he was like, I had to go to the bathroom. I guess I had to go number 2 too, right? And it's like, okay. And then he asked Smoke if he could come in. He's like, well, aren't you going to invite me in? And everybody's like, why would we invite you in? You've been coming in and out of this joint the whole night. You don't need to be invited in. And he's like, well, I'm just trying to be polite, and I'm just trying to be friendly, and I'm not trying to be a bother. Basically, I'm paraphrasing, but basically that's what he said. And they're like looking at him like, you're weird. Like, for this whole night, you've been coming in and out this place, and now it's a problem? Now you can't come in here? Now you gotta ask permission? Some sus. And that's how they knew Cornbread was a vampire. But it's funny because I want to bring this up. So we talked about Cornbread. We gotta talk about Grace. Grace is not the problem. And a lot of you think that Grace is the problem, which is sad. But I want you to look at Grace as a mother. And I know what you're going to say. Even if she is a mother, she should not have called those vampires in. And while maybe, but if a vampire who you're surprised because they know your specific kind of Chinese language and they're speaking it to you, and they turned your husband, what are you supposed to do? And they basically said they're going to kidnap your child and turn your child. What are you supposed to do? Your poor defenseless child, which I actually think that their child would have been fine, because she looked like she had a vendetta against a lot of the war people. So I just think that she probably was like, screw all these people. But if it was your baby, if it was your daughter, and you knew that this crazy vampire dude was going to go kill your daughter and turn her into a vampire, what would you do? And I just think that y'all don't take that into consideration, because the whole time all I'm hearing is, yeah, there's no POC solidarity. Like, bro. What? So there's no, we're not going to give any leeway to a mother. Okay. Yeah, I get it. Grace wanted to leave early. She didn't want to stick around. She wanted to leave. That's why her husband went to go and get the car. I get that. And maybe, yeah, okay, should she have called in the vampires into the juke joint? Maybe not. But at the same time, if that was your daughter, think about it. But I absolutely love the inclusion of Chinese people into this story and how accurate it was to the time period, showing that there were Asian people who lived in the Delta, Mississippi Delta, at that time. So I love it. And if you don't know the history, basically, Asian people were They weren't necessarily considered black. I mean, at one point they might have been, you know, colored black, whatever. But after a while, they ended up not being considered, you know, black or, you know, that. They were just like their other own thing. And so they ended up having a little bit more rights than black people and black folks at that time. And so they would end up creating, like, you know, grocery stores, like corner stores. And they would have one that served the white people and one that served the black people. And that's kind of how they got, you know, by at that time in the South. So it's really interesting. And I think there's a PBS documentary about it, or like a clip or something about it, from like a news clip maybe about it. And I think that's dope. But all I know is I have to see this movie again, because I'm sure there's stuff that I missed. And I want to say something. I did not end up seeing this movie in IMAX, which I really want to see it in IMAX, because I hear incredible things about it in IMAX. Like, I hear incredible things about this film in IMAX and how incredible it is. Ryan Coogler actually put out a like a 12-minute clip about the different like sizes of Seeing Sinners and how it was made for this screen and this screen and this screen, and how you'll see it differently in different screens. And I think that's dope. So dope. Okay, I'm sure it's dope in IMAX. Let's talk about Buddy Guy. Buddy Guy. So, and I'll say it, I don't care. I'm a little ignorant, because I didn't know Buddy Guy was still alive. I didn't. But that's because a lot of the great blues legends are not here with us anymore. And I didn't know how old Buddy Guy was. But Buddy Guy is only like, I think he's in his 80s. So he's not that old, actually. So yeah, but he's still out here touring and doing like incredible stuff. And love you, Buddy Guy. You're amazing. Okay? And again, as somebody whose father loves the blues and somebody who grew up listening to the blues on the radio with my dad, I have an appreciation for it. And I just love the infusion of blues into this story, and how special and important blues is, and how seriously it's been being taken right now. Because for a long time, people didn't listen to blues. Like, after a hot minute, people stopped listening to blues. And obviously we know the evolution of blues. Blues never will die, because no matter if fresh blues is being made or it's being, you know, put into other genres, it's always going to be there, because we know blues got turned into rock and roll helped to create, you know, funk and hip hop and all these R&B and soul music and all these things, all these very black art forms of music. And so we know it's never going to die. But if people want to get back into traditional blues music, that would be amazing. Because I saw like a news headline or something where Buddy Guy was like really like happy to be in this film, because he was like, I really hope that this inspires more people to start listening to blues, and maybe make blues more popular again, and people like start to appreciate it more. And I really hope that too, because people just don't listen to it as often. That and jazz. Like, I know people listen to jazz, but like contemporary. So we need to be supporting blues artists, right? So let's do that. But the soundtrack to this film is 10 out of 10. Shout out to Ludwig. I love you. He also worked on I think he worked on Black Panther with Ryan Coogler. 10 out of 10. We love you. You're incredible every single time. Love you down. You're so good. Like, every time you hit it out of the park. Incredible work. And I love that Ryan Coogler keeps working with him, because he's always going to show up and show out every single time. And I want to talk about this one thing, which I will talk about super briefly, but there was this interview that Ryan Coogler did on The Breakfast Club, and basically he was talking about the connection between blues and grunge. And if you don't know, grunge music was actually created not created, because grunge is a made-up term that was made up in the 90s when grunge got really big, just to like have a term for the music, because the music coming out of Seattle was actually very diverse, and there wasn't really a term for this really diverse rock music that was happening at the time. But I do get where Ryan Coogler is coming from. So if you don't know, the origins of what we know as grunge to this day was created by a black woman, okay? And she is incredible. Her name is Tina. She's incredible, and we love her. And she never gets her credit, like, ever. When we think of grunge, we think of Nirvana, we think of Pearl Jam, we think of Alice in Chains, we think of Soundgarden. We do not think of the origins, right? And so when Ryan Coogler was talking about the connection between blues and grunge, I felt that, because in a lot of music, especially grunge music, especially like Soundgarden's music and even Alice in Chains, like, there's a very down-tempo type of energy to the music. Not only that, the lyrics are very bluesy. When you really, really like look into the lyrics of a lot of grunge music, it's very like bluesy lyrics when you really like delve deep. And so it made sense. And he said that while making Sinners, that he actually ended up listening to a lot of grunge, and it really helped in making this film. And I said, yup, that makes lots of sense. That actually makes lots of sense. But he also said he listened to things like Lauryn Hill, which makes sense, because the miseducation of Lauryn Hill is very, yeah, if you know, you know. And yeah, but he said listen to a lot of blues, grunge, Lauryn Hill, and other things. And I was like, that's so cool. Like, that's so cool, you know? And the music for this film is just like top tier. Like, I can't get it out of my, like, Miles, who plays Sammy in the film, like, this is his first role. This is his first ever acting role. And he actually was a background person for her. Love her. And she actually got him to audition for this film. And he did. And he got it. And he was incredible in it. And I really hope he gets more roles. And I really hope that he blows up with his music, because he deserves to, because he's incredible. He has such a powerful voice, and he plays the guitar so well. And what's interesting is that prior to signing on for this film, he didn't play guitar. He had to learn how to play guitar for this film, but he had the voice already. So it was just a matter of him learning the guitar. And once he learned the guitar, killed it, nailed it, incredible. Oh, I love it so much. And yeah, I've been listening to the soundtrack on repeat for the last like few days, and it's just so good. So good. But yeah, man, I could talk about Sinners for the rest of my life, bro, because it's just so good. Like, it's such a good story. It's such an important story. The vampires are cool in itself because I love vampires, but people have already said this. You could take the vampire stuff out of this film and it would still be so important. Like, we haven't even gotten to the ending where Smoke kills a KKK member, and then he ends up dying himself, but he ends up going to where Annie is, because him and Annie had a child who ends up passing away, and he ends up getting to hold his child. It was so beautiful. And like, it's stuff like that. And that could have been the story in and of itself, that Smoke just ends up killing a KKK member, right? At the end. Like, that could have been the whole story. But it doesn't end up being that way. It actually ends up being a vampire flick, and it's really, really good. And like, you can take this story for several different ways, and it's impeccable. Ryan Coogler is a genius, and I am so proud of him. And I'm also proud of him for getting the deal that he got, where he basically was able to have the rights to this film after 25 years, where the film will basically have the residuals end up going to his family. Like, all the money's going to end up going to his family, because he's going to end up owning the film, like owning the entire like rights to the film and everything like that. And I absolutely love that for him. I just love Ryan Coogler like down, And like I said, I absolutely positively adore his stutter, because I feel like it's so homely, it's down to earth. It shows you that he is not willing to, you know, gussy himself up and try to be this thing that he's not for these like Hollywood elites. No, he's gonna be him. And he's gonna remind you every day that he's from Oakland, California, and he's gonna have that Oakland vibe. And I absolutely, absolutely, positively love it. So yeah, I cannot wait to see what Ryan Coogler does. I pray for a sequel, but if there's no sequel, I'm cool. I could watch this about 11 times. It's so good. And like I said, there's been people who have literally seen this movie 7 or more times, and that is so special. Like, so special. And I heard that we are, with this film, beating out the record of Avatar, like the Blue People movie, the first one. And I hope he wins all the awards, and I hope that he is just really praised for this masterpiece, because this is just so good. So if you have not seen Sinners, and go see this movie, okay? This is the best movie I've seen in years. I'm not joking. It is so good. Please go see this movie. Please go see this movie. So that was just my little, very all over the place, like always, review of Sinners. I hope you enjoyed this video, and stay tuned for more videos. And I'm back, baby. YouTube, I am back. So check it out. And yeah, but please go watch Sinners. Oh, you will not be disappointed at all. At all. Well, until next time, peace.